They said I was too slow to join them, but they never imagined I'd be the one to outrun them all in the end. Hi, my name is Margaret Hayes, though everyone who ever loved me called me Maggie. I'm 72 years old, and despite what people assume about someone my age, I remember every detail of that night like it's tattooed behind my eyelids. Funny how betrayal works, how it sharpens memory instead of dulling it. I'm telling this story because I can't keep it inside anymore. I used to be afraid of sounding bitter or dramatic, but now, I just want the truth out there. And maybe, if one person hears it, they'll think twice before letting someone make them feel small just because time has left a few wrinkles on their face. So here it goes. It started on a cold evening in late October, the kind of night when the wind sneaks through the window cracks and nips at your ankles. I was standing by my front door, the screen squeaking faintly as I pushed it open to greet them, my daughter, my son-in-law, and my granddaughter. They were bundled up in expensive coats that didn't match the weather, but matched the way they looked at me, like I was an obligation instead of a person. "Hey, Mom," my daughter, Rachel, said, brushing past me like she had somewhere more important to be. She smelled faintly of grapefruit lotion and city stress. "Grandma," little Emily squealed, running into my arms. I held her tight, pressing my cheek against her warm hair. Kids don't know how to fake love, that's what I've always believed. "You ready, Maggie?" my son-in-law, Tom, asked with forced cheer while glancing at his watch. "Ready." God, I thought I was. At least I had tried to be. I'd spent that whole day preparing, laying out my winter boots, arranging my pills for the evening, practicing getting in and out of the car quickly so they wouldn't sigh like they usually did. I'd even skipped my afternoon tea so I wouldn't have to use the restroom while we were out. They were taking me to see the new community center downtown, something they kept telling me I needed to join to keep active. "It'll be good for you, Mom," Rachel had said. "You should socialize more. You get lonely." Lonely, she said it like she wasn't part of the reason, but I went along with it because I'm 72, not dead, and I liked the idea of seeing something new. The first sign that something was wrong came when I stepped off my porch and Tom whispered, not quietly enough, to Rachel, "Make sure she can keep up. We have reservations." Reservations, that word hit me like a pebble flicked at a window, small, sharp, easy to ignore, but still felt. "I'm fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Let's go." But the truth. Walking hurt. Not enough to stop me, but enough to remind me I was human. We got to the car. They all piled in quickly. I took a beat too long adjusting the seatbelt because my fingers stiffen in the cold. "Mom, you good?" Rachel asked with a sigh forming under her words. "Yes," I said. "Just the buckle." The drive wasn't long, but the silence was. The kind of silence where you can feel thoughts buzzing around the car like invisible mosquitoes, annoying, biting, but nobody swats at them. We arrived at the community center, a modern building with bright lights and glass doors. It looked more like a tech startup than a place for art classes and senior socials. "Looks fancy," I murmured. "That's the point," Tom replied. We walked toward the entrance. I wasn't slow, not really, but I wasn't matching their pace. It was like they were in a race and I was strolling through a garden. "You guys go ahead," I said softly. "I'm right behind." But they didn't hear me. Or maybe they did, and chose not to respond. Inside, the lobby buzzed with people, young, old, somewhere in between. I smiled at the sight of it. For a moment, I even felt excited. Maybe this could be good for me. We approached the registration desk, and while I was reaching for the pen to sign in, I heard it. The sentence that would sit like a bruise inside me for days. "She's too slow," Tom whispered to the receptionist, thinking I was out of earshot. "We'll fill out the forms for her." I froze. Too slow, not she needs help. Not she has arthritis. Not even she's having a tough night. Just, too slow, like a broken machine, like an inconvenient piece of luggage. My hand tightened around the pen. I felt heat rise in my chest, sharp and electric. Old age doesn't numb you. If anything, it makes emotions louder. "I can sign my own name," I said, stepping forward. Rachel's face tightened. "Mom, we're just trying to help." "It didn't sound like help," I replied, my voice trembling. The air thickened between us, like fog in a valley. Tom cleared his throat. "We're on a schedule." There it was again, that hint of impatience, of life lived faster than mine. I wanted to say something sharp, something that would cut him the way his words cut me. But Emily tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, can we see the art room?" Her innocent eyes pulled the anger right out of me. I nodded. "Of course, sweetheart. We walked, me at her pace, her at mine. It felt good, but something else happened that night. Something they didn't plan for. As I walked through that center, I met people, real people. A woman teaching pottery who smiled like she meant it. A retired firefighter who cracked jokes loud enough to fill the hallway. A group of women my age laughing in a circle, playing cards like teenagers. They pulled me in instantly. Within 20 minutes, I had made more connections than I had in the last year. And my family noticed. Mom, Rachel said sharply, approaching me as I chatted with a group at a table, we need to go. Already? I asked. It's late, she said, though it wasn't even 7:30, but the truth was written all over her face. She wasn't comfortable watching me thrive. She liked me dependent, small, slow. I think I'm going to stay a bit longer, I told her. The shock on her face was almost comical. Mom, we brought you here, she said. We drove. I know, I said softly. And thank you. But I can call a cab. You're being ridiculous, Tom muttered. No, I said, standing straighter than I had in years. I'm being alive. They stood there, blinking, as if they'd expected me to fold into their impatience like I always had, but I didn't, not this time. They left without hugging me. They left angry. But I stayed. God, did I stay. Late into the evening, laughing, creating, talking, remembering parts of myself that had been buried under years of being too slow, too needy, too old. When I finally got home in a cab, the house felt different, bigger, lighter. And I realized something that night. I wasn't the slow one. That I'd just been walking with the wrong people. And that realization, it sparked something inside me I hadn't felt in years. Something sharp, something alive, something that wanted revenge. Not the scary, violent kind, the quiet kind. The kind where you rebuild yourself so loudly that the people who belittled you can't bear the sound. And trust me, I did. You'd think that at 72 years old, revenge wouldn't taste so sweet, but let me tell you, it has a flavor. A quiet one. Like black coffee with 1 spoon of sugar, bitter at first, then warm in the throat. The morning after that night at the community center, I woke with a strange kind of buzz in my chest. Not anxiety. Not fear. Something else. Something that made me stand a little taller. When I shuffled into the kitchen and put the kettle on, I felt awake. I felt seen, not by my family, but by people who didn't expect me to be anything other than myself. As I stirred honey into my tea, I replayed the moment Tom whispered she's too slow, and something inside me tightened, not with sadness this time, but with a spark of resolve that I wasn't going to let them define me anymore, and I wasn't going to let them control the pace of my life, either. Around noon, my phone buzzed. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Rachel. Her text was short, clipped, the kind she sent when she was annoyed. We need to talk. Come by this afternoon. Come by, not can we talk. Not are you free? Just an expectation. That I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I clicked it off and slid the phone into my sweater pocket. That I had other plans. Ever since last night, I couldn't stop thinking about that group of women laughing around the card table. Linda, Cheryl, Janice. They had an energy about them, something untamed and unapologetically alive. I wanted more of that. So at 2 p.m., instead of going to my daughter's house to hear whatever lecture she had prepared, I put on my nicest cardigan, grabbed my purse, and called a cab to the community center. Walking through those glass doors again felt like stepping into sunlight after years of living in the shade. I expected to feel awkward or out of place, but instead people waved at me, waved as if I belonged there already. Maggie, called Linda, her gray curls bouncing as she waved me over. We were hoping you'd come back. Her voice was warm, genuine, so different from the tight, polite tone I'd grown used to from my own family. I hope I'm not intruding, I said, though I already knew I wasn't. You kidding? Janice laughed. We need someone with your kind of fire. Fire. Nobody had described me like that in years. We played cards, drank weak coffee, traded stories, some funny, some heartbreaking, all real. And somewhere between Linda's rant about her ungrateful son and Janice's confession that she sometimes eats cake for breakfast because who the hell is gonna stop me, I felt something loosen inside me. That I wasn't alone. By late afternoon, I found myself in the art room again. The pottery instructor, Martin, placed a lump of clay in front of me. Make whatever you feel, he said. That I tried to shape a small bowl, but my hands trembled slightly. Old joints, stiff fingers. Instead of correcting me, Martin only smiled softly. Imperfections tell stories, he said. My throat tightened. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that, not since before my husband passed. By the time I left, the sun was setting behind the center, coating everything in gold. It felt like the world was shining just for me when I got home. I checked my phone. 4 missed calls, 8 texts. Mom, where are you? We were waiting. This is disrespectful. At least tell me you're okay. You can't just disappear at your age. At your age. There it was again, the cage they kept trying to put me in. I didn't respond. I slept well that night. Better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke to pounding on my door hard. Impatient. Familiar. I wrapped my robe around myself and opened it. There stood Rachel, arms crossed, hair frazzled from stress. Tom hovered behind her, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Mom, she said sharply, why didn't you come yesterday? I blinked. I was busy. Busy? She repeated, like I'd spoken a foreign language. Yes, I said. Busy living. Her mouth tightened. This isn't funny. We were worried. Tom nodded. You should have called. And you, I said, meeting his eyes, shouldn't call people slow. His face froze. Rachel turned to him sharply. What did you say? He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. I heard you at the center. And I want you both to know I'm not a burden. Not a project. Not someone you have to manage. Rachel's eyes flicked downward, guilt spreading across her face like a slow blush. Mom, we didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said gently. But it's all right. I'm changing the rules. The rules, she repeated. Yes. I stepped aside, letting the morning light spill across the doorway. From now on, I decide my schedule. I decide who I spend time with. And I decide my pace. That's not safe, Tom said. For who? I asked. They didn't answer. Rachel looked at me, searching for the mother she used to know, the quiet, accommodating one. But she didn't find her. Instead, she found someone who had finally stepped back into herself. We just want what's best for you, she whispered. Then let me live, I said. Not as your obligation, but as my own person. They stood silent. For the first time in years, I closed the door on them and it felt liberating. Over the next days, I became a regular at the center. I joined the pottery class, the walking club, even the Thursday night storytelling circle where retirees shared their most scandalous secrets. Each day, the laughter got louder, the air lighter, and I felt more like a woman rediscovering her place in the world. But something else was happening too, something unexpected. People started gravitating toward me. My confidence, my honesty, even my stubborn streak, they admired it. Some said I inspired them. Others said I reminded them of who they used to be before life shrank them down. I didn't realize it yet, but I was becoming something of a fixture there. And it was only a matter of time before my daughter noticed. Because when people change, when they grow beyond the limits others set for them, it threatens those who benefit from the old version of you. And Rachel, she was about to get very, very threatened. But that's where the revenge truly begins. I had a rhythm I hadn't felt in decades. I woke each morning, not to anyone's schedule, not to the expectation of being helpful or slow, but to my own heartbeat. I made my coffee, dressed slowly but deliberately, and stepped out into the world on my own terms. And the more I did it, the more I realized being underestimated is the most powerful weapon anyone can have. Rachel didn't take it well. The first time she showed up at the center unannounced, I saw her from across the room before she even noticed me. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her arms crossed, and her lips pressed into that thin line I knew meant she was plotting her argument. Behind her, Tom lingered, shuffling awkwardly, a man who clearly didn't want to be anywhere he couldn't control. Mom, Rachel began, voice clipped. We need to talk. Alone. I raised an eyebrow and tilted my head, a gesture I'd seen my mother do when she knew the conversation wasn't going the way the other person thought it would. Alone? Or do you mean you want to lecture me in front of my new friends? Her eyes narrowed. Maggie, this isn't a game. You can't just disappear for days and disappear. I interrupted, letting the word hang in the air like smoke. I showed up every day. I'm alive, I'm active, and I'm thriving. That's not disappearing. That's living. I could see her blood pressure spike as her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Tom's mouth opened, then closed again. He knew better than to speak. Rachel's voice dropped lower, almost conspiratorial. You're making this about you. You can't just abandon your family. I laughed softly, not bitterly, but a low, dangerous laugh that sounded like the snapping of a branch underfoot. Abandon? I went exactly where I wanted. And for the first time in years, I went where I wasn't told to hurry, slow down, or be someone I'm not. That's not abandonment. That's freedom. She stepped closer, her tone sharper now, tinged with panic. This is ridiculous. You need us. I shook my head slowly, savoring the tension. No. I need me. And you, well, you need to learn that your control over me is gone. Her face turned red, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Not the fear of someone threatening her, but the fear of a person she thought she knew, her mother, being unrecognizable in her strength. It was then I realized something crucial. Revenge didn't have to be loud or cruel. It could be subtle, elegant, unstoppable. It could be the quiet storm that left them scrambling, unable to comprehend the new landscape I had built for myself. I began inviting people into my life deliberately. I brought friends from the center to my home for dinners, pottery club nights, storytelling evenings, even quiet tea sessions where we shared secrets we hadn't told anyone else. Each time Rachel called, asking where I was, I simply smiled and said, "I'm busy," letting the pause in her voice do the rest of the work. And slowly, I watched the cracks widen. I didn't block her calls or delete her texts. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I created a world that made her obsolete. She couldn't guilt me anymore, couldn't scold me for moving slowly, couldn't make me feel like a burden. Then came the day I got a call from Emily's school. She'd been invited to a student art competition, one that overlapped with my Thursday night pottery class. Rachel assumed I'd automatically rearrange my plans to take her granddaughter. "Mom," she said breathlessly over the phone. "You have to come. Emily needs you." I paused, listening to the faint background noise of children chattering. And for the first time, I let a small smile creep onto my face. "I'm so proud of Emily," I said, softly, letting my tone convey warmth and love, "but Thursday night is my class. I'll make sure she has a ride there with someone else." There was a pause. Then Rachel's voice faltered, a split second of panic seeping through her carefully practiced composure. You can't just." "I can," I said, firm and final. "I always could." And that was it. She hung up without another word. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just went to my pottery class, watched the clay spin between my fingers, and felt something I hadn't in years: power. Not over anyone else, but over my own life. That night, I thought about the phrase Tom had whispered at the center. Too slow. They had used it as an insult. A put down. Something to remind me of my limitations, but I had turned it into fuel. Every slow step I took, every careful, deliberate action, became a signal. I wasn't too slow. I was methodical, patient, strategic, and most importantly, unstoppable. I end the coming weeks, Rachel tried everything: guilt trips, late night calls, even dropping by my house unexpectedly. Each time, I welcomed her with calm smiles and polite refusals, letting her frustration do the work for me. And in watching her flounder, I realized the beauty of quiet revenge. It wasn't the dramatic showdown. It wasn't shouting or plotting behind doors. It was simply showing up in the world in a way she couldn't anticipate and refusing to be small anymore. By the time Emily visited for her weekend stay, she found a grandmother who was lively, vibrant, and unafraid. We baked cookies, sculpted tiny figurines out of clay, and shared stories late into the evening. Emily's laughter echoed through the house, and I realized that even my family couldn't diminish the joy I had found. And through it all, I understood one simple truth: revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about rising above them, making them irrelevant by living so fully that their opinions no longer matter. I had waited decades for this kind of freedom. And now, nothing, not Rachel, not Tom, not anyone, could take it from me. The slow storm had arrived, and it was only just beginning. The storm I had quietly cultivated, my slow, deliberate rebellion, was no longer quiet. It had grown into something undeniable. Something that Rachel and Tom could see, but not control. And I had reached the point where I didn't even want to control them. I only wanted them to understand that I no longer belonged to anyone but myself. It started one Saturday morning. I had spent the previous night at the center, helping organize an art showcase for local seniors. The halls had been alive with chatter, laughter, and the soft hum of brushes and clay tools. I had left around 10 p.m., tired but exhilarated. That morning, I was greeted by a flurry of texts from Rachel. "Mom, where are you? Why didn't you come home last night? "You're being ridiculous." I sipped my coffee slowly, smiled, and typed a single reply, busy. It was enough. Later that day, I took a long walk to the park nearby. Leaves crunched underfoot, the air crisp and biting in the way only November can be. I walked at my own pace, my cane tapping lightly against the pavement, people moving around me in a blur. And I realized something. Being too slow had taught me patience, observation, and strategy. I could see things others missed. I could move carefully, deliberately, and I could strike when it mattered most. And strike I would. It happened the following week. The community center had announced a citywide showcase, a chance for members to display their artwork in the town hall. The center director had asked me to feature my pottery pieces prominently when I showed up. Rachel and Tom were there unexpectedly. They had come, probably expecting to lecture me, to drag me into their old world of guilt and obligation. But they froze when they saw the displayed pottery line had been curated with care: bowls and vases, delicate sculptures, and one large centerpiece, a vase shaped like a woman standing tall, head held high, eyes forward. I called it the slow rise. People gathered around, admiring it, commenting on the elegance, the strength, the story it told. And I watched Rachel's face shift: astonishment, shock, then a flicker of something else, regret. She had underestimated me. Just like she always did. The pinnacle came during the awards ceremony. The center had decided to honor outstanding contribution to senior arts, a recognition voted on by peers and instructors alike. When they announced my name, the applause was deafening. Friends, strangers, people I had met in the past few weeks, they were cheering for me. I walked to the stage slowly, deliberately, savoring each step, my cane tapping in rhythm with my heartbeat. Rachel and Tom sat frozen, mouths open, as the reality hit. I had not only survived their contempt, I had flourished beyond it. On the stage, holding the plaque, I looked out at the crowd and thought of that night when Tom had whispered, "Too slow. Too slow to join them, too slow to matter in their eyes, too slow to live life on my terms." And yet, here I was. Faster in heart, in spirit, in presence, than I had been in decades. I could see Rachel trying to find words, but none came. I could see Tom shifting uncomfortably, realizing that the woman they had tried to define by their impatience was untouchable now. The applause echoed, warm and alive, and I let it wash over me. Not for them. Not for revenge in the petty sense. But for me. For every moment I had let them define my pace, my worth, my life. Later that evening, when I returned home, Emily ran into my arms. "Grandma, you were amazing," she squealed, eyes sparkling. I hugged her tight, feeling every ounce of pride and love. "Thank you, sweetheart. But you know what? The best part is, I finally figured out how to be amazing for myself." Rachel and Tom didn't show up. They didn't need to. The message had been delivered. My life was no longer theirs to influence, and I realized then that revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about proving to yourself that you are more than enough. That you can rise, even when everyone tells you you're too slow. I'm Margaret Maggie Hayes, 72 years old, and I've learned something crucial: time doesn't make you slow. People's assumptions do. And when you finally step out of those assumptions, life can move faster than anyone ever imagined. I walk my path deliberately now, unafraid, unstoppable, alive. And those who once doubted me, they'll remember this lesson every time they see the woman who was too slow rise faster than they ever could, because some victories don't make noise. They simply make history.